Welcome to Devotionary, where we make the Bible accessible and applicable. Anyone who has spent much time in and around the church recognizes the significance of the term Redeemer. It's a common term, most often used in reference to Jesus Christ. He is the one who died on the cross, offering himself as the substitute for sinful mankind. In so doing, he provided a means of redemption for sinful men and women, offering them the opportunity to be freed from their captivity to sin and death. But redemption, while a familiar concept to most Christians, is not always fully appreciated or understood. And in Isaiah chapter 44, verses 1 through 8, God is going to reveal himself as the Redeemer of the people of God. Despite their deception, lies, and dependence upon their own human effort, God would one day redeem them. The redemption of sinful man by a holy God is not something we should take lightly or treat flippantly. God doesn't have to redeem. He's not obligated to rescue sinful men. But he chooses to do so because he is a faithful, loving God who wants to manifest his glory and magnify his name among the nations of the world. Just as he had at the beginning of chapter 43, here God addresses his people by the two names of the son of Isaac, Jacob and Israel. Jacob had been his original name, given to him at birth, and it meant holder of the heel, supplanter, or layer of snares. This name had to do with the circumstances surrounding the births of he and his brother. And when the time came to give birth, Rebekah discovered that she did indeed have twins. The first one was very red at birth and covered with thick hair like a fur coat. So they named him Esau. Then the other twin was born with his hand grasping Esau's heel. So they named him Jacob. Genesis 25, verses 24 through 26. That was how Jacob came by his somewhat strange but highly descriptive name. And this rather bizarre birth narrative reflects a message that God had given to Rebekah even before the boys were born. She had been barren and unable to give Isaac any children. So he had pleaded with the Lord on behalf of his wife. Genesis 25, verse 21. And God heard his prayer and enabled Rebekah to become pregnant with twins. But the two children struggled with each other in her womb, so she went to ask the Lord about it. "Why is this happening to me?" she asked. And the Lord told her, "The sons in your womb will become two nations. From the very beginning, the two nations will be rivals. One nation will be stronger than the other, and your older son will serve your younger son." Genesis 25, verses 22 through 23. Jacob, though technically not the firstborn, was going to end up having dominion over his brother. And later on in the story, Esau, in an act of impulsiveness and driven by physical desires, would trade his birthright for a bowl of stew. Not long after that, when their father Isaac was on his deathbed, Jacob and his mother would trick Isaac into giving his youngest son the blessing reserved for the firstborn. Jacob was a deceiver, and his actions brought the wrath of his brother down upon him, forcing him to run for his life and live in exile in Padan Aram. But God eventually arranged for Jacob's return, and that event was accompanied by a God-ordained name change. Now that Jacob had returned from Padan Aram, God appeared to him again at Bethel. God blessed him, saying, "Your name is Jacob, but you will not be called Jacob any longer. From now on, your name will be Israel." So God renamed him Israel. Genesis 35, verse 10. So why is any of this important? Because God opens this passage by using both names of this man as a designation for the people of God. The first name, Jacob, is an apt description of the people of God. They were deceivers and supplanters, having replaced the one true God with false gods. But the name Israel means God prevails. It describes the undeniable reality that God was going to use the people of Israel in spite of the people of Israel. His will for them would prevail, not because of them, but because he was a faithful God. All throughout his life, Jacob had tried to fulfill the will of God by using trickery, deceit, and his own human efforts. God had already told Rebekah that the older son would serve the younger, but she and Jacob were both guilty of trying to accomplish God's will through human means. But in Isaiah chapter 44, God seems to be reminding the people of Judah that it is he who will bring about their preferred destiny. He is the one who had made and chosen them. They had nothing to do with it. And almost as if he is addressing Jacob himself, God assures him, "Don't be afraid, my servant Jacob, Jeshurun, whom I have chosen." Isaiah 44, verse 2. God was going to do all that he had promised to do. When Jacob had been forced to flee the land of Canaan in order to escape the vindictive wrath of his brother, God had visited him in a dream and made a covenant promise to him. I am the Lord, the God of your grandfather Abraham, and the God of your father Isaac. The ground you are lying on belongs to you. I am giving it to you and to your descendants. Your descendants will be as numerous as the dust of the earth. They will spread out in all directions, to the west and the east, to the north and the south, and all the families of the earth will be blessed through you and your descendants. What's more, I am with you, and I will protect you wherever you go. One day I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have finished giving you everything I have promised you. Genesis 28, verses 13 through 15. And here in Isaiah chapter 44, God is reaffirming that promise to the people of Judah, the descendants of Jacob. He uses another name by which to refer to them, Jeshurun. It means upright one, and it seems to be used to describe the ideal character God expected of his chosen people. And this is not the first time God used this particular name for Israel. But Jeshurun grew fat and kicked. You grew fat, stout, and sleek. Then he forsook God who made him, and scoffed at the rock of his salvation. They stirred him to jealousy with strange gods. With abominations they provoked him to anger. They sacrificed to demons that were no gods, to gods they had never known, to new gods that had come recently, whom your fathers had never dreaded. You were unmindful of the rock that bore you, and you forgot the God who gave you birth. Deuteronomy 32, verses 15 through 18. They had abandoned God, the one who gave them birth. They had gotten fat and happy, content with their lifestyle, and turned their backs on the one who had made them what they were. And yet, here is God promising to bless them. For I will pour water on the parched ground, and cause streams to flow on the dry land. I will pour my spirit on your offspring, and my blessing on your children. Isaiah 44, verse 3. God describes a future day when his people will once again take pride in being his children. Rather than boasting in their false gods or taking pride in their wealth and material possessions, they will declare their joy at being God's chosen possession. One will say, I belong to the Lord, and another will use the name Jacob. One will write on his hand, the Lord's, and use the name Israel. Isaiah 44, verse 5. And just to ensure that the people of Judah understand who it is that is going to bless them, God refers to himself as the Lord, the King of Israel, and his Redeemer, the Lord of hosts. Isaiah 44, verse 6. He is the Lord Jehovah, the existing one. He is their King and Sovereign. He is their Redeemer, actually their Gaal, or kinsman redeemer, who will ransom them out of slavery to sin. And he is the Lord of hosts, the commander of the armies of heaven. With these four designations, God sets himself apart from all other gods. I am the first and I am the last. There is no God but me. Who is like me? Let him make his claim. Isaiah 44, verses 6 through 7. It's a rhetorical question that requires only one answer: no one. But just to make sure they understand the answer, God expands on it. Don't panic, don't be afraid. Did I not tell you beforehand and decree it? You are my witnesses. Is there any God but me? There is no other sheltering rock. I know of none. Isaiah 44, verse 8. They have nothing to fear because they are the people of God. Their future is in his hands and not tied to their own ability to live up to his exacting standards. They had already proven their incapacity to remain faithful. They had repeatedly shown their propensity to rebel against him. They were deceivers and tricksters, always ready, willing, and able to supplant the one true God with a wide array of false gods. But God assures them that he remains Jacob's Redeemer. Just as he restored Jacob from exile, he will restore the people of Judah from exile, and he has even greater plans in store for them when his son returns again.